When I was doing a trial, he said, "You're a good lawyer." He goes, "You'd be a better FBI agent."
Did you ever feel in fear of your life?
I did a war crimes case where they raped an Iraqi girl and then they executed her family while they were raping her.
What do you think was the most interesting fraud case you worked?
Kurt Siuzdak spent over 20 years in the FBI taking down organized crime, investigating fraud, and working high-stakes cases around the world. Before that, he served in the U.S. military and worked as an attorney. Now he's sharing the untold stories of organized crime investigations, overseas operations, and what it really takes to be an FBI agent.
Kurt, welcome to Locked In. Thanks so much for coming today.
Oh, thank you very much for being here, asking me to come.
Yeah, what are the chances that two people from the same state were in a MrBeast video?
Right now, I don't know with what he's doing, about 100%, right?
Oh, I guess with the bigger ones, but
yeah, it's crazy that both. I wouldn't say I was a star, but the main victim for that, and calling you up and finding out that you were part of the same adventure.
But you were one of the original ones, and you were in a solo episode too. This was 4 years ago. It was I escaped or watch an FBI agent catch me or something.
I was hunted by the FBI.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is crazy because for a while my kids almost one of my sons almost got beat up because he said, "Oh yeah, my dad is going to be a MrBeast." They're like, "You're a liar! No, it couldn't be." And then they found out. They're like, "Oh my God, what do you know?" I'm like, "Nothing." They called me up. I was just a victim of their escapades.
And we didn't even know when we were talking to you, and then you casually brought it up, and then we casually brought it up that I was just in.
I knew that. I actually had known that. I knew. I watched them. I watched MrBeast when I hate to say it. And I don't watch MrBeast when I'm driving a vehicle. I possibly listened to MrBeast with the video off to the side. But yeah, I remembered that because one of my clients, Zach Schaufstall, had actually mentioned that, and then I put two and two together. But yeah, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, that is such a small world.
He gives. I'll bet you he's responsible. I don't know as an incubator, but as an incubator, I'll bet he's been responsible for a lot, as many shows and people being in social media as anyone.
Yeah, it would have been funny if you were the law enforcement officer casted in the 100 Days.
No, I don't want to be.
I know, but it would have been funny.
No, I don't want to do that.
Imagine.
No, I want. But they call me up and they're like, "Can you come down and can we do it today?" And I was within a matter of hours. I was on an airplane.
And you were retired by that point?
I had just retired.
Okay.
And I was, I had just retired, and I had was getting over COVID. I mean, I got my butt kicked from COVID. I literally if you did COVID hit you hard or no?
Yeah, 3 times.
Okay. I was sitting outside my house and I couldn't breathe, and I was talking to my doctor, and I was like, "You need to go to the hospital." I'm like, "But if they put that, what was it, incubation, or if they do that, everyone's dying in Yale from that." They're like, "Not everyone, but yes, it's a risk." I'm like, "But you can't, how far can you walk?" I'm like, "I don't know, 5 feet." They're like, "You need to go to the hospital." So I said, "I don't want to do that. I'd rather just die in my backyard. It's just a better way of going than being stuck in a hospital." So I walk up to my hot tub and I open up my hot tub. I figure, what better way to go, right? Just sit there, relax, and let but all of a sudden the air, the steam starts cleaning up my breathing. I'm like, wow, I can breathe better now that I'm sitting in a hot tub waiting to get, for my final moments. And so I was able to breathe because of the hot tub and going in and out of it for 2 days, except I had something called COVID fog. So I decided I needed to put gas in my car. Why, when I'm in the middle of COVID, do I need to have gas in my car? I don't know. And then I ended up in Pennsylvania, in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Don't know how I got there. $400 of Easy Pass violations. I just drove. And then I woke up at a gas station with no money, no wallet, it was winter, no winter clothes, shorts. I had the shorts on from the hot tub, and I had driven my Jeep all over the place, and then until it ran out of gas.
Just how you showed up today. No money, no
money. Yeah, well, that's a different story. No money, no card. Yeah, don't play kids if your kid is nasty. Yeah, I showed up for my I had played chess with my son yesterday, and I think he was not upset or was upset with me. So I think as a practical joke, he took the credit cards out of my wallet as I left. So showed up here with no credit cards. Fortunately, I do have a full tank of gas to get home.
And at least he left you with your driver's license. He didn't wipe you clear.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I saw it was still.
Was there? Is it okay? Yeah.
But everything else was wiped.
Everything's
out.
There's nothing. Where all my cards? They're all wiped out. Yeah. So that was. I'm like, yeah. So I beat my son in chess. I tell him I never hold back on chess. Chess is a full-time sport, and I was teaching him about sportsmanship. And I guess I taught him well because he put his hand out. He said, "Congratulations." I shook it, and then he stole everything from my wallet. Yeah.
Where did you grow up, Kurt?
A distant land called Naugatuck. It's a place called the Naugatuck Valley, about 40 miles in Connecticut, and it's Naugatuck is filled with a lot of wonderful people, but not originally not some of the brightest people, because they had decided to build a landfill on top of a hill in Naugatuck, which became a Superfund site. So one of the more toxic places, and they took all the chemicals from all of the arms manufacturers during World War II, and they dumped it on top of a hill. Because what are the chances that rain is going to hit the hill and then get into the groundwater? So they polluted Naugatuck when they, a while back, at least part of it. And so I was there. I lived, went to the military, lived around in numerous places. Now I'm currently in a place called Madison. And if anyone doesn't know, in the East Coast, there's a place that's like the Shire where you have hobbits. And this is between Branford and Old Saybrook. There is a place where there's no crime, very little crime. And it's Branford, Guilford, Madison, Clinton, Westbrook, and Old Saybrook. And it is just a wonderful place to live. But there are no jobs there. It's just people from New York live there, and so I'm living over there.
A lot of seafood.
They have a bunch of great seafood, and they have some nice beaches. Madison was sued because they were evidently accused of discriminating against people of color because you couldn't park a car to go to the beach, and Madison has a great beach. And Madison just discriminates against everyone, including Guilford, Clinton. So it wasn't personal. I don't think they made it very difficult for anyone to park and go to the beach in their little town. But I think Greenwich and Madison were sued, and I think they both lost.
Yeah, one of our good friends lives in Clinton, so we go and visit him. He has a house on the beach in that area. So
yeah, really that's nice wonderful.
Out there. Yeah, it's beautiful.
That's actually in this whole area, a lot of the houses are really at sea level. But in Clinton, there's like a hill. You know, right? There's a hill up there where a lot of the houses are on a hill looking out, and that's just wonderful.
Yeah,
there will be no erosion there.
Yeah, and they have steps. It's like a platform that goes down to the water. They have that.
Yeah, Clinton's really a nice little town. They have I wake up 4 in the morning, and I ride a bicycle, and I actually go through the Clinton and back around at a very slow speed, and that's probably one of the nicest areas you could go in Connecticut, and very good, very nice people. Remember when they were having those flash mobs in like the West Coast where everyone would come in and they just rip off stores, and they would have a mob. They'd go in and they would just break into a store and then steal and then run away with it. In Clinton has a whole Clinton Corners. It's a big, huge outlets area, and they were having that, but they had cops. One day I drove in, there's like 500 cops. They're parked everywhere. I'm like, what the heck's going on here? They're like, oh, they're expecting a flash mob. I'm like, it's not going to happen here because there's only like one way out. They had the police. I mean, if you're going to commit crime, Clinton is not the place to do a flash mob because you're stuck. There's nowhere to run, and everyone would have been cornered and dragged off to the state police.
See, my version of a flash mob was in high school. It was the trend where a mob would break out and start singing or dancing.
But that's because you're old.
No, I'm young.
No, you're not. See, that's relative. You're old. That's not how the flash mobs are. You bust into the stores, you grab everything that's
the new
loaded.
flash
Yeah,
mob.
that's a new flash mob for teenagers. And that's in New York. And yes, you're if you want to try singing, I'm happy to watch because
Yeah, they would used to do it at the malls and everything. They would just break out singing.
yeah. But now you have up in Hartford, or north of Hartford, they're doing that with cars. They're racing. They're like taking over roads and then having the same goofy stuff with cars, drag racing rather than you and your friends singing what kind of songs? Yeah, so
High School Musical.
High School Musical songs. Yeah, so here it's now with cars. One of the craziest things with do you have an e-bike?
No, what's an e-bike? Like an electric bike?
Yes.
Oh, no, I don't have an electric bike.
Okay, it's an e-bike. Okay, so see, this is age. you thought I was old, but you may be older. So e-bikes right now are the
lazy way to use a bicycle.
no.
Yeah,
No,
you need the electric
they're fake.
propeller.
No, they're fake.
What do you mean they're fake?
No, there's two types of there's four types of e-bikes. There's class 1, 2, 3. Class 1 is like you pedal. Class 2 is it goes 20 miles an hour. Class 2 is you pedal and you have a throttle, it goes 20. Class 3 is like 28 miles an hour. But the other ones are the ones that are fake. The seats are about that far off the pedal, so you can't pedal. It's got like 4,000 watts of power in the batteries, and it goes 60 miles an hour. And you go on YouTube. My son wanted to buy one. I'm like, oh, let me look. I went on YouTube, and I'm like, oh yeah, it goes 28 miles an hour. But if you unscrew this screw and you pull it out, it can do 60. And they've had casualties. I think even in this town, there have been kids that have gotten hurt with these e-bikes because you can pull things off of them and they're unregulated and they're like the cheap version of a motorcycle. They go 0-60 in like 4 seconds and they'll hold 60 miles an hour for 20 minutes. They're crazy. And you see these, that's where a lot, that's why they're trying to regulate them everywhere because they're out of hand. And I didn't think that electric bikes were where electric stuff was fast, but damn, it's fast. I mean, it's faster than motor vehicles.
What was your upbringing like in Naugatuck?
Oh, I went to public school. I can't remember anything about it, thankfully. It was a blue collar town. Now, do you ever hear of something called Mounds and Almond Joy?
At the candy bar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mounds and Almond Joy were actually made in Naugatuck. Okay, so every year, and probably from the time I was kindergarten until 8th grade, we would go to the Mounds and Almond Joy factory. And it was like the Willy Wonka factory, except in place of Oompa Loompas, there were women that were about 4 foot tall, Polish, smoking cigars and cigarettes, making Mounds and Almond Joy, wearing these white outfits. And you would walk around, and they literally had it was just a bunch of older women, like they probably may have been 30 years old, but looked like they were 70, that were wearing these, what do they call them, babushkas, like those clothes that just hang down, and they were all sitting there with a cigarette making Almond Joys back. Like, I don't want to touch that stuff. That's disgusting. Because they're like literally with the cigarette. So they finally got shipped off they got sold to Hershey, but that was a big deal for us. That was our field trip every year, and they also had a field trip where you could go and they had this pipe where it had spring water, except it was about a half a mile from 1,000 feet below, but a half a mile from the Superfund site. So it was probably shooting out radioactive material, and people were drinking it because they thought it was fresh. So yeah, it's a tough place.
What did your parents do for work?
Father was a lawyer and a judge, and he thought the people we're very lucky because he had been the longest serving probate judge in Connecticut, and he would say he would dislike the job, but he loved the people of Naugatuck, of Beacon Falls and Naugatuck. He just loved being around them, and that was his. I mean, he just thought that was the best. I've never seen a guy who was more happier with the job than him because of the fact that he got to deal with all the people from Beacon Falls, Naugatuck, and the surrounding areas.
What kind of an attorney?
Just a solo practitioner. I'm not even sure if they even really exist. Just general solo practitioner. Spent half his time doing that, and the other half with probate court.
Is that how you became passionate about the law?
who said I was passionate about the law?
You must have been at some point
I
get into the career you did.
No, I was either that or prison. I don't know. I mean, that's what do you do when you got a bachelor's of art degree and you're? I joined the Army and realized that I loved the idea of being in the Army, but didn't like actually being in the Army itself. I didn't like sitting around camping or pretending to walking around with a rifle with no bullets, and that's what most of the time when I was out of college, it was like. It was before Desert Storm. So then I had opportunity. I was a lieutenant. I was an M1 tank commander. I'm a platoon leader, and I had the opportunity because they were doing a downsizing to get out right after to get out and become a reservist. So I did. Then I went to law school.
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. This week, it's the Battle of LA, Rams versus 49ers, and I'm loving this lineup. First, give me Brock Purdy, more passing yards. Mac Jones held it down while Brock was gone, but it's time for Mr. Irrelevant to flip the switch and go beast mode. Next up, I'm taking Christian McCaffrey, more rushing plus receiving yards. He's Brock Purdy's favorite weapon and is going to get fed all night long. And with Nick Bosa out for the 49ers, Matthew Stafford is going to have a lot more time to sit in the pocket. So I'm locking in Stafford, more passing yards too. Prize Picks is super easy to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if you get them right, you can cash in. Prize Picks also invented the flex play, so even if one of your picks misses, you could still take home a payout. And with fast, secure withdrawals, including Venmo, Apple Pay, and more, getting paid is just as easy. Download the app today and use code Ian Bick to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Ian Bick to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. What was you and your dad's relationship like as a kid growing up?
It was good. He was against me joining the FBI. He liked law school, but when I went to law school, I got pulled out for my third year of law school for Desert Storm. So I literally had the second week of law school. I was watching TV in my law course, and I said, and we're hereby activating the 256 Brigade and 141 Field Artillery, and you're supposed to report right away to be deployed for Desert Storm. So that was my third year. So I missed my third year of law school. And law school is great for anyone who wants to go to law school.
Don't go.
No. Law school, most people, half the people, and this maybe, well, at least when I was coming out, that graduated law school didn't become lawyers. They may become in-house counsel or other things, but they weren't necessarily practicing law afterwards. It's a great education. So in that respect, it does provide you with something, with a way of looking at the world, without even if you're not interested in practicing law. Now, one of my sons, I have a son in Pace University, and he was thinking about law school. I told him that law school is fine, but you have to make the economic choice to figure out how you want to do law school and be able to survive afterwards. Because if you put yourself $500,000 in debt, and then you're not sure if you can actually get a job, then you're dead because your student loans aren't dischargeable, and you'll be haunted for the rest of your life with it, and then you'll die miserable and poor. So you have to have a plan. It has to be economically feasible, and for a lot of people, it is. But I have, well, okay, confession. Okay, so after I got back from Desert Storm, when I got back from Iraq, for me and my contemporaries, we were in the FBI in Iraq. It was a difficult time. I mean, we were getting bombed all the time. But I had the worst case of ADHD. I felt like I had a bad case of PTSD, and my wife who's a therapist, was like, you need to be checked for ADHD. I'm like, oh, I have ADHD. Now, everyone who worked with me knew I had ADHD. Like everyone. I just keep talking, can't shut up. I talk a mile a minute. And but no one would say anything. And when I was in the FBI, I actually had 3 or 4 desks because I would just monitor. I do all my different stuff on each different desk, and they were all filled, and they were all looked like hell. But I organized myself by desks, and everyone allowed me to do it because I was actually fairly successful at what I was doing. So I took a test for the ADHD. I'm like, I thought I did well, and come out. I was like the top 1% of the worst cases of ADHD ever. So don't feel bad. You can, when my doctor says, well, it's surprising you can actually get a job. I'm like, well, but only in the federal government can I work with a case of ADHD. But it was. That's why I realized that practicing law was painful, because sitting at a computer typing is painful, whereas thinking is not. Gaming and thinking is actually it feels very good, and just typing is I find very oppressive and difficult.
What kind of law did you want to get into when you went to law school? If you had
I did criminal defense work when I got out, and I like that. I mean, if the government wants to get you, they can get you. I mean, it's hard. Every time you wake up and someone wakes up and goes out, they're probably violating some law. And I had a friend of mine who I very, very deeply respect, and he was telling me there's one guy who's a real problem. I'm like, dude, that guy went to Tibet and was lived with Tibetan monks for 15 years, and then brought a Tibetan monk over here because he was dying, and has been raising him for the last 5 years. So you tell me he's a problem because of marijuana. I tell you, he grew up. And it's important to know that people who, in criminal law, I loved my clients. Criminal defense, I liked my clients. Even as an FBI agent, the people that I was targeting, I can think of maybe one. I'm sure there's one person I thought was really evil, but even the people that were in Al Qaeda in Iraq, that were AQI, they were doing. I mean, they all believed in what they were doing. It wasn't they're fighting the Americans because the Americans had taken over their country. Most of the people have. I can't think of anyone I would say was really, really, really bad. I mean, Bin Laden gets hits it for killing innocents. But I like dealing with those people, and I like criminal law.
Was your mom in the picture?
Yes, yeah, she was a nurse, and I had my family was together, and again, that's the core of having it's hard to succeed in life if you have just a mother or father. And if you don't have both. And I was lucky to have both my parents live until they were in their 70s.
What were some values they instilled in you as a kid?
I don't know. Stay the hell out of problems. Stay the hell out of trouble. Let me think here. Yeah, work was. I mean, I started working when I was 8 years old. I was working at a barbershop when I was 8 years old, and I worked. I basically had a job, that paper boy, for my entire life. And you want to know what I learned about that? Enjoy your life. You only get one of them. Working, working is how you are able to enjoy your life. But time is your only commodity. So just make sure you know that your health is a huge deal. Time, and if you work your whole life and that's it, then you're missing something.
So you go to Desert Storm and then you come back. How old are you?
Oh. "28, 29.
And you finish law school right as soon as you get back?
I actually, they tried to throw me out because there's a cap on how my law school was not happy with me being deployed, and so there was some issues with the people that deployed of actually graduating, because they want us to start our whole third year over, and we were not interested in paying for another third year of law school, and people had to intervene in order for us to graduate. I went back for one course and then took courses at Tulane University, and they allowed me to graduate. Tulane was very, very decent for making sure that I was able to graduate. I went to Loyola for my degree, but Tulane was the place that made sure I graduated.
How long was the deployment for?
I never got that. My first deployment, and it probably set the stage of my life. We got activated in November. Went to Fort Polk, went to Fort Hood, and then we're getting ready to deploy, and the war was over. I mean, it was like a 4-day war. Like you miss. It was like a bad weekend. I mean, a few people died, a few tanks, but the whole Iraqi army got crushed. And I'm sitting in Fort Hood, going, "What the hell? Why am I here? The war's over." And then I had made friends in the military that I still keep today, which were wonderful people. I went back to New Orleans, where my reserve unit, where my National Guard unit was, and then got ordered to go back on active duty right away. So then I spent the next year and a half back on active duty because my whole unit got demobilized, and for me, they forced me to go to active duty. Now, my theory on this, so that 760 people got demobilized and I got sent to Fort Sill. My theory on this is that when I came back from, I paid for my apartment in advance. So when I got demobilized, I went back to my apartment, and my landlord had thrown all of my stuff away and had moved someone else in. And so I had nothing left at all. So I was literally homeless. So I'm like sitting there like, oh, here I am, come back to my apartment, and like had thought I had someone taking care of it, the landlord said, and meanwhile had no place to go. And then I went to the bank, and back then I realized the bank, because I didn't have an address, they weren't taking that address, the bank wouldn't release money for me. So I had no money, no apartment, nothing. I mean, literally, I had a motorcycle, which was stored separately, but I had literally nothing except for a bunch of camouflage clothes. And I'm like, I'm totally screwed. Like, I've never been homeless in my life, and here I am. So I went back. The next day, I had to go back to the military, and I told her, like, this is going to be a real interesting summer. I'm in New Orleans. I'm basically got to figure out where I'm going to go. The Army didn't even issue me a tent, and I got to figure this out. And then what I think happened was I think the word got up to my commanders, and they're like, oh, we can fix this because he needs to have a permanent place to live in order to have a bank account to get that back. And he needs to have a place to stay. So we're just going to send him to training. And then he can become a company commander, a commander here when he's done. And so all of a sudden I got orders, when everyone deactivated, I got orders to go to Fort Sill. And then I was able to restore my life by having a permanent address and having all this stuff. So I used to think that I was unhappy. I was upset that they took me there. They made me do that. In retrospect, I think they're doing me a favor, and they just wanted to be abusive to me as they sent me off the way because they knew I was not happy about it. So for them who ordered me off, thank you very much. It only took me 25 years to figure out you were doing me a favor.
Was it hard to readjust to law school after taking that, almost 2 years off?
I had graduated while I was in law school, while I was in the active
when you
Army.
went back to active?
Yeah, in fact, I actually typed up one of my final papers on this paper that was classified because it was like a advanced computer for the day, which meant it could barely do anything. It was word processor. I typed up my final paper, but the paper itself was classified. So I had to bring it in, present it to the teacher, have him read it, and then I had to take that paper and then light it on fire because it was actually a flammable paper. That's the whole purpose. So everything would go, take it out, walk it to a trash thing, and burn it. Right there. Copiers were a thing, but not the best. These printers you have now were just coming into, inkjet printers were just coming into becoming a thing. But literally it was like, they called it flash paper. So I burned all of my finals after they were submitted.
So you get out or you graduate law school and you take the bar and you pass?
Yes.
And you go right into law right away?
I got the highest, I was in the top 1/3 of 1%. I was high, like 1/3 of 1%. For my passing the Connecticut Bar Association, for taking the bar here. Yeah, and then I started practicing, and hated it. And then one day I woke up and said, I want to join the FBI. Actually, it was because of a judge, Squatrito, told me when I was doing a trial, he said, you're a good lawyer. He goes, you'd be a better FBI agent. He goes, you'd enjoy, you won't sit around as much. You want to, and during a trial, he told me this. And I took his advice on it and then joined the FBI.
During a criminal trial?
It was.
It's interesting. You got both sides of the spectrum early in your career.
Well, the ATF had arrested a guy for like having 10 guns, and he was a felon. I think he was a bank robber, a heroin addict, former. And then he had served his time. He was doing everything. He was doing everything right. And then someone asked, and he was a woodworker too. So someone asked him, "Hey, can you build a stock for this thing?" And he built it, and then he started playing. People would come over and build. He would build like woodworking for these people as a spare job. But when you're a felon, you're not allowed to have a firearm. So he got caught with like firearms like all over his house, and he got convicted at a trial, and we argued. I mean, it was obvious he was going to get convicted, but we argued to the judge, the Squatrito, that this guy did everything right, and here he is being looking at 100 years. And I don't think the prosecutors understood the argument that we were trying to make to the judge, because they offered him like 100 years. Like maybe it wasn't. First offer may have been less, much less, 10 years. And but we go to the sentencing, and during the trial, I'll step back. During the trial, the prosecutors presented photographs of the guns, which I had never seen, and they were supposed to disclose that. And I said, "Look, I object to these photos. I've never seen them before." And I said, "Your Honor, if I just brought stuff in the day of the trial, you wouldn't let me just bring it in. They had to disclose it. We asked for that." And the judge's like, "How do you know that I won't let you? I wouldn't let you present it." I'm like, "I don't know. I don't think you would." He goes, "Well, I would." I said, "Okay." So during sentencing, we bring in, we say, "Your Honor, here we are, and we have all these medical records, and we want to present them to the court. Here are the medical records." The prosecutor, and the prosecutor like, "Your Honor, he's presenting the day now. He should have brought this a month ago and told us all about this." I'm like, "But Your Honor, you told me if I bring in the day of, it's okay." And the judge is looking at it and going, "Did I actually say that?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "I think I did." And so the prosecutor's upset. He goes, No, I'm going to give you to prosecutors. I'm going to give you a day to read the medical records, and then I'm going to do the sentencing." And so come back the next day. It was the next day or two, and for the sentencing, and then my client gets 1 day time served for all the terrible medical conditions that we told him he had, and all of that. And we said I laid him out all the different conditions he had, and so we walked. The judge said, "Okay, come on up here." And so we got 1 day time served. In fact, I looked at my client and said, "You should do at least 3 or 4 months for the grief that you've caused me." It was stressful, getting ready for you to go for 100 years in jail. But he's like, "You should do at least 3 or 4 months." And he's like, he's looking at me and go, "What do you mean?" And he goes, he had to get, how you get booked? If you get booked, the first day counts. So if you get fingerprinted, that counts as day one for any type of, for if you look at time. So he already had that happen to him. So he had the 1 day, so he's ready to walk out. He had to get processed. And then the judge called me up and called me and the prosecutor up to the podium, and we were talking, and he told the prosecutor, the prosecutor did a great job. I mean, it was just unfair. It was just an unfair case. I mean, I understood why they did it, but putting a guy who did everything right for 20 years into this situation was unfair. And having him on probation was a good, fair thing. So if he did it again, he was going to go for a long, long time. And that was a very just ruling. The prosecutors weren't happy, but I think it was a just ruling. So then I walk away from where the judge is, and then the judge looks at me and says, "Oh, by the way, Attorney Siuzdak," he goes, "I would like to thank you for providing me with 15 copies of all the medical records." And the prosecutor looked over at him like, "What?" I'm like, "Your Honor, but I want to make sure that we had enough in case there was an appeal." It was a big, huge box. And again, I thought I was upset about the photographs. I thought, and he goes, He said, I want to thank you for that. I go, Your Honor, that if we had appeal, you have plenty of copies. He's like, no, I appreciate why you did that. That was it. And it was fair.
How do you feel about non-violent offenders not getting their gun rights back?
I never had a problem with, as an FBI agent, I've dealt with a lot of people that have had firearms in the States, out of them, and I've never had a problem with anyone. I mean, I've had people like threaten them, but I'm like, do you really want to go throw down with FBI agents? There's no better gunfighters in the world than some of the FBI agents. I mean, they put us through like 17 or 18,000 rounds of ammunition during training. Fighting an FBI agent is a wrong thing to do. It's different than that's a while back. Now maybe they only do 5 rounds. I don't know, but back then they were FBI agents were good at what they did with that, and I never had problems with people having firearms, holding them. I think it's a constitutional right. It's also, I mean, people will, it's not for the government. For a militia, it keeps everybody honest. I don't have a problem with. I also think that time matters. Even for voting, okay, you serve your time. Okay, thank you very much. You did it. Most people who commit crimes do crimes. Either occurs because of some type of weakness. It's not usually because people are evil. I mean, it's usually a weakness or a misunderstanding or something happens. There's a lot of mitigating issues, even though they committed a crime. I mean, what they did was a violation, a criminal violation. A lot of times, it's not a judgment on a person, and it never has been for me where I have to judge. Where I had to judge, I judged someone just because they had a crime. One of my clients, it was my father's client. I was assisting him. He worked for a club called a motorcycle club. I won't say which one. And he was driving along the road. There was a bad fight between 2 clubs, and they opened up the door, and then they shot the wheel out from underneath the president's club, the motorcycle of the president's club, which is a bad thing because if you lose your front tire while you're driving on a highway, nothing good comes from that. And if it happens, it's by a shotgun, it's all bad. So he did 3 years in jail for that, and we argued it was a public service homicide, and the guy ran. He was like, I'm out of here, Kurt. We're done. First thing he did was he got home, grabbed his motorcycle, went and bought a case of champagne, dropped it off at our office and said, thank you. I am done. I'm done with this. I learned my lessons, and you'll never see me in this state again. And it's just a learning. A lot of times it's a learning experience for people. It's painful too. But again, just because somebody is convicted, I don't think their life is over. In fact, if you look, the trend now is that you should be able to get people have their records expunged. You know, and you have 18-year-olds who get into fights and then have permanent records. Well, I'm sorry. Let me turn this off. I apologize. I wouldn't think of it. I apologize. If
the FBI agent's breaking the rules,
but it's good. America is about second chances. Talk to Trump. He's had plenty of bankruptcies. He failed once at a presidential campaign. He succeeded twice. He's had second chances. That's the best part about America. You can have all kinds of problems and then wake up one day and say, I'm going to do this and move on. And nobody asks, have you ever been convicted or something, and socially. I think in the FBI, I did internal investigations. In internal investigations, you have a lot of FBI agents doing wrong things. There's like 5,000 pages of rules, and guaranteed when they wake up and go to work, they're violating one of them. And so, but I did internal investigations. I told people it's not a judgment. You just have to be honest about this. There's no you have a Fifth Amendment right with an administrative hearing, and just be honest and own it. And whenever anyone asks, just own it. Oh yeah, I have one of these, because one guy who got in trouble in New York, he was having a problem with alcohol, and he had a divorce, and he was really struggling, and they ordered him to go to AA. But unbeknownst to him at the time, that inside the federal building of 26 Federal, Alcoholics Anonymous actually had a weekly meeting. And they forced him to go to that one so they could monitor whether he was going. So the first time he goes down there, he comes up after an hour. He goes, "Oh my God, Kurt, I can't believe it. It was like what we called it, an SAC convention, a special agent in charge. It was like an SAC convention because all the bosses were down at the AA meeting with me." He goes, "I couldn't believe it. There's like 3 of them down there. And these are the guys who just got me, who just punished me." I'm like, "Yes, they punished you, but that didn't mean they never said they had that they had never done anything wrong. They have the same struggle as you have." And he was like, "I just couldn't believe we had so many people that were bosses." I'm like, people make mistakes. In the FBI, if you make a mistake, you own it. You have to admit it, and then you accept the punishment and you move on.
So tell us about joining the FBI. Once you figured out in your mind you wanted to join.
1996, I didn't like practicing. I joined. At that time, I couldn't, before I joined the FBI, I had an injured knee from the military, and I couldn't walk. When I decided I couldn't walk, I was actually on a cane, and I've struggled with for good and bad. I've struggled with my leg for most of my career, but I decided I was going to run. I had to do a physical training, so I just said I'm going to learn how to run again, and I went from not being able to walk to running every day, like miles, so I could join. It was excruciating to do because it was just. But finally, I could run fast enough to pass, and then I got in the FBI. But I ran with a limp, so I was at the World Trade Center, and after the towers collapsed, they had all the news, and people in the bureau saw me jogging when I would jog, and they all knew my limp. So they said we were horrified until we saw in the dust, we could see the figure running down, running from the collapsing building. We was like, "Oh, that's Kurt. Look at him limp." And so I had people calling me up, making fun of me. I'm like, "Look, I'm trying to save my life from this building, and you're calling me up to bust my ass over my jogging." He goes, "Kurt, we were just happy to see you were safe, but we could see you through all the dust and haze. We knew that's Kurt. He sucks at running." I like to think that I'm a good runner, which I'm not. And he, but that was, again, I was always amazed in the bureau that people knew what my flaws were, and they were. I thought I could hide that fairly successfully. I failed at hiding the fact that I ran with a limp and I was having a problem. I failed with everyone knowing that I was ADHD, and they still let me do everything I wanted. I'm up until New Haven. I mean, I went to Iraq twice. I went to the aftermath of Katrina down into New Orleans to help the police department. It was a wonderful job.
What was the process like to join?
It was two stage. You had to take a written test, and then you had oral interview, and the written test was a bunch of math questions, and the oral interview was trying to figure out if you could talk. The trick with the FBI, and we're going not today's FBI because I'm going back, but the FBI agents have to talk with people. They have to be able to interview people. That's the job. It's really not gunfighting or arresting. It's interviewing and finding out what's going on, and then having people talk to you afterwards. Because everyone you talk to, you should be able to call them back up and ask them additional questions, and you should be able to relate to them and be able to have a relationship with them. We had people that couldn't do that, and they had to go into different like technical fields or other fields because FBI agents usually are extraordinarily good at conducting interviews and having relationships with people, even if people are the subjects of the the investigation.
What was your first assignment once you're in?
We did applicants for the first 6 months, and one of the applicants, one of the people that I interviewed was a model. I remember she was heavier. She was a heavy set, but she was a model. She was very attractive, and she committed suicide like a few weeks after I interviewed her because it was because of the difficulty there was being a model at that point that wasn't a very thin thing. I thought she had a very good life going on there, and she was making money, and then she killed herself. It was really sad and painful to have someone's body weight be what determines them taking their life or not.
So you were screening new recruits as your job
Yes.
to the FBI.
Yes.
And
interviews. So I was doing interviews for, if you have to, for backgrounds, you have to give like 4 or 5 people to that you would vouch for your patriotism and your abilities.
And your division was internal affair type?
I went from in New York. I was doing organized crime. I was doing forfeiture, but I was doing organized crime, terrorism. Funny, I was doing forfeiture. One of my friends told me, "Oh, you got to go there." And then I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "You get to do everything. There's nothing you can't do. Drugs, you just pick what you want." So about 2 years into it, my boss, a gentleman named Dan Gill, has to do a performance evaluation. He calls me and says, "I have to do your performance evaluation." He goes, "Kurt, I just want to tell you, I look at this great drug case. I'm looking at this." He goes, "You're in the forfeiture unit. Why don't you do any forfeiture?" I'm like, "You're not doing all forfeiture. You're doing everything else but forfeiture." I'm like, "Dan, I learned this from you." He's like, I know. He goes, "Make sure you're getting some money. You have money judgments where you get ordered to make payments and seizing property. At the end, make sure you're seizing enough property." I think I got like $1 billion. By year 8, I had $1 billion of money judgments. I had one case, which I left. I was in the middle of. It was like $2.4 billion. I took the money from the Gambino crime family. I seized, I think, 58 million, somewhere around there.
In one sitting, you seized 58 million from the Gambinos?
No, they gave it to us. We had a judgment, and the part of it, they were turning over property to us. So we knew the property. We seized. We put liens on it, and they agreed to turn it over.
So when you take money,
but they made a lot more. Trust me, I did not impoverish the Gambino crime family. They were doing just fine. It was an internet porn case. Now this is back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, tell us this whole story.
Yeah. Okay. It's a lot of work to be a criminal. Now you may not think that, but it is, because if you have 2 types of criminals. You have like your full-time criminal, then you have your accidental ones that just screw things up and can get arrested because they're not doing things right. But the full-time ones, and like the Gambino crime family, they had been working these an internet porn case. So what they did was they would go like pornography magazines. Let me step back on this. So one day I was talking to my son, and he asked me about the case. I said, "Yeah, I did this internet porn case, and there was it was about, they had advertisements in the back of magazines where it said, if you want to have sex talk, you call 1-800 for free." But they had like 30 1-900 numbers where if you called, you had to pay. And then inside that little like classified, you would have 800 numbers, which it looked like they were all separate. In fact, the whole advertisement was one advertisement, and the whole purpose was to direct the people to call the 800 numbers, because when they did that, they captured your KIC code, which is your phone's code, and then they would charge your phone for a voicemail service of like $40 a month. And so everyone who called the 1-800 numbers, not the 1-900 numbers, they were getting hit, and they would get these voicemails that were never used, and they were charging them until they found out in their phone bill, because at that point cell phones were expensive. They found out that this was being charged. Then they would call and complain, and then the Gambinos had a data center where they get the complaint, and they would just send all kinds of photos, like we have all the stuff that you looked at, which had nothing to do with what the people actually looked at, but photographs of having sex with dogs, animals, all this weird stuff. They would just send it to the house. This is what you looked at, and then people would just like cut the voicemail, but they wouldn't ask for money back. They just wanted nothing to do with it because their wife had just received pictures of bizarre stuff, and they made, I think, 1.3 or 1.4 billion dollars. This was a good money. So I told my son about this. He's like, "That's a lie." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "That doesn't make any sense." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "I thought he was talking about the crime itself." He's like, "There's no such thing as a porno magazine." I'm like, "Yes, there is." He goes, "No, there's not." I'm like, "Yes." And I'm like, "Why would there be a porno magazine?" I said, "I don't even understand this." He's like, "Yeah, but," he goes, "Look at all the kids in high school that are just giving away free shots of themselves. Why would anybody pay for a magazine when everybody's just putting themselves online anyway?" I'm like, "Oh my God." Yeah, you make sure no one passes around pictures of themselves online because that may be other problems. And he's like, "But everyone does that." I'm like, "No, not everyone does that." And he goes, "Oh, by the way, yes, there are pornography magazines that are being sold." And it was a whole different, I'm talking to him about this case. He just couldn't even understand that there was like Playboy magazine, High Society. He didn't even believe they existed, which blew me away. How this is 10 years, 15 years, there's no such, I don't even know if they're sold anymore. But the Gambinos made about 1.5 billion. We indicted 700 plus $million for fraud, and then they paid $50 million back.
Was it a civil case?
No, we put it was a criminal out of the Eastern District. We put one guy got 9-10 years. One guy, they all got like between 3 and 10 years in jail.
So once that judgment gets rendered, how does the actual physical forfeiture aspect of it work?
They hand it over
right away, like next day, a bank wire, a check?
Oh, they gave us property. They wanted to, because they actually owned infrastructure. They owned something called Cass Bell, which was a telephone company out west. So we were able to monetize. They owned a bank. We were able to disassociate them with the bank with the telephone companies. In fact, when we arrested them, the biggest problem was they owned the 911 server, or the emergency, was it 911 when you call for emergencies? They owned that.
The call centers? Or?
Yeah. They actually owned the phone. No, they owned the phone company. So if I shut down the phone company, there would be no fire. You could call for fire. You could call for police. We were trying to keep the phone companies up and running because we didn't want them to collapse. We had to make a deal with the people to make sure that those phone companies kept running, and they and to the credit of the people that we arrested, they took that seriously, and they were able to keep all the telephone companies up, and then we had them switch ownership, and we took $50-something million from them.
Do you think the government wants them shut down to stop producing money, or do you think a part of it is they want that income coming in? Because $58 million is a lot of money.
No, it's not.
You don't think so?
Not in the government.
So that's just pennies to them?
When during the Iraq War, they would have pallets of $20 and $100 bills being flown in. The military would have pallets filled with them. The money is that case that was $2.4 billion. That actually affected the national debt or national budget. It was so large, so there had to be like a bullet put in the budget saying this money is from this source. But most of the money isn't even cash. It's electronic. It's ledgered. So, no, I don't think it's. I think the Gambinos thought it was a lot of money, but they made up. They got a lot more, and it was part of the cost of doing business.
Did you ever feel in fear of your life when you take that much money from an organized crime family?
No. I think that, in the FBI, the only place where we would get bombed all the time over in Iraq, that was dangerous. But no, I didn't really feel that they're there to make money. There was a DEA agent that was killed, and the FBI shut down everything the mob was doing for a while until they found out who did it. They told him, "You're just not going to function. We're gonna shut down every organized crime thing in New York. And they're not interested. They handle their own business internally, but they're not interested in hurting agents. It's bad for business.
What were some other forfeiture cases you worked that were notable or memorable?
There was a terrorism case where a New Yorker was pretending to be a sheikh, and he was I think he was either sending or trying to send night vision goggles to the Taliban and to Al Qaeda, and we seized all the assets because he made his money because he had a scam involving conservative Christians. In fact, so he created something called, I think it was called eBullion was the company, and the eBullion had no. Although they said it was electronic bullion, there was no gold behind it. Or if there was gold, the gold wasn't being transferred fast enough. So that's actually a commodities issue, and there's a commodities exchange that regulates how commodities are purchased and sold and shipped and how booked. And he was violating issues in that respect, and that's how we got him. Was on part of the fraud. During that, I think one of the subjects killed his wife. Executed his wife because she would cooperate, and then I think he got like 10 years for fraud or material support. But that was the forfeiture works because most people expect to do time. They just hate when you take the money from them. It's just that really sucks, right? I mean, I had one guy who we started negotiating his time, and they negotiated like 4 years, and then he would say about the money. So we started negotiating money for time, and it didn't make any. We were sitting there not making any sense. He wanted to keep $200,000. If he did 2 additional years, is what it came down to. So he did 2 years extra in jail to make $200,000. But if you cut that down to hours, it's like making like working at Burger King or some other low end place. You don't want to spend that kind of time to make $200,000. Just go stay out of the jail and earn it yourself. But he literally negotiated himself for $200,000 for 2 extra years in jail. We're like, okay. And then the day he went to sentencing, he came up to me. He's like, Kurt, that was the worst deal I ever made. I'm like, I cannot believe I'm going to be working. And he knew exactly, like $4 or $5 an hour. He knew exactly what the time was, how much he was going to earn per hour. I'm like, you wanted that. He's like, I don't know why I wanted that. I'm like, okay. He goes, I apologize. We weren't going to talk you out of it. You were asking for more time in jail. So the money does weird things to people. The Gambinos were the Gambinos at that point were very efficient. They understood, they knew how they made their money. They knew how much they took, and they knew how much $50 million was. A lot of people do. But money, if you have a problem and you can pay your way out of it, you don't have a problem, you have an expense. And it's important to recognize it because everyone, whether you're a banker, everyone runs into some type of issues at some point, and you just look at it and say, okay, I'm going to eat this, and this is what's going to cost, and I'll move on, and don't wreck your life over it.
Did you enjoy working forfeiture, or did it get boring?
Forfeiture was like, I actually had a forfeiture team that did I did everything else, and I had a team of contractors that did all the forfeiture work that were, they were ex-agents, they were phenomenal, and they did all kinds of, there was a company called WorldCom that was part of a fraud. They did the entire company's financials in like 6 weeks. They went through everything that possibly was involved in that company in 6 weeks. I couldn't sit at a desk and do that for an hour. It would drive me nuts. But they worked so hard to go through that and make sure we had an understanding of how the money was being distributed.
When did you leave the forfeiture division?
Right, I went from there right to Iraq in 2008, beginning of 2008. End of 2007, beginning of 2008.
And you were in New York that whole time?
I was in New York from 97 to 2008, yeah.
So were you there when the Wolf of Wall Street's case was going on for his forfeiture?
You know, there's so many. The funny thing about the FBI's, well, again, I'm talking about the FBI pre-2020. There's 3 FBI's. There's FBI headquarters, there's FBI New York, and there's everywhere else in the FBI. It's just, that's how, New York is its own world. They can do whatever they want, and they set their own rules, they set their own violations. They have it, because when you go to New York, I would have to do a 2-hour commute into New York plus, like most people, and then I've had commutes that have been 10 hours long. I had one commute when I was driving out. It started to snow, and I got caught in the Merritt Parkway, and my car ran out of gas because everyone was. I'm like, oh my God, this is awful. I have to walk and get gas because everyone on the road, the highway just stopped. The New York agents have to suffer things that are just unlike anything else anyone else in the FBI has to suffer. In fact, I used to half joke, and it wasn't true. I went to Iraq because there was no commute. I got to knock off 4 hours of my commuting every day by just getting bombed. And I'm like, that's a deal for me. I'm tired of the commute.
What was in Iraq for you? Why'd they send you there?
First time I was in the counterterrorism, and I was a liaison to Special Operations Command, Central Command, which are all the special operations groups, and me. Okay, we're talking 2 totally different type of people here. I'm not one of them. They're way beyond me, and I'll tell you what, the U.S. is the best there is with special operations. I actually went to I had one operation with a group, and I walked in, and there was only 2 other agents, and we're sitting there, and there is they like have dinner, and we're eating, and there's steak and lobster in the middle of nowhere. There's steak. It's the best meal I've had ever in the military and the FBI. I'm eating it, and I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. Why is this? And one of the guys looks over and goes, it's a last meal. And he was being serious. He was they're eating well because we're about to go into some nightmare. And I was like, wow, that's really dark. I'm like, okay, this is a guy. I mean, when you have, I was sitting there with the guys, and we had a printer in our Humvee, and there was a riot going on. These guys were running around with like explosives, and they're printing out photos of video of a gunship overhead that was monitoring where we were. I mean, it was these guys were the craziest, best people. And ultimately the professionalism. And one of the things I learned from them was how conservative they were, as far as they knew when to shoot and when not to shoot. They were. A lot of people walked away who probably wouldn't have walked away for lesser trained people, because those guys were just top of the game, amazing to watch. And then there was me. Like, okay, walking around. I mean, it was some of the most amazing people, and all of them were good guys. You know, there was very little ego. That's what, and maybe that's because in the FBI we have our own ego, but there was very little ego that we were dealing with, and it was super impressive. And the soldiers were just as good. I mean, the soldiers in Iraq we got along great with, and so I enjoyed my time. 2003 and 4, I was there for a little while. I forget how many months I was there. In 2008, I was there for a year, and I was extended, I think, 4 times.
Was that by choice to go there, or
Yeah.
they ordered you there?
Yes, by choice.
You were looking for a change of scenery? Or?
The commute was horrible in New York.
So it was really all because of the commute.
Everything in New York, you're talking to everything in New York.
You could have gone anywhere in the country and you want to go to Iraq.
Well, my wife wants. We had family here. My wife had family, and it was a choice. And for New York, it's always a choice. And also, it was pointed out to me by people in the FBI that every time I was having a child, went overseas to Iraq, had another child, went back overseas to Iraq for a little while, had twins, and then went to headquarters in Washington, a little better than Iraq, for 18 months. And I'm not really a big fan of like changing diapers, so I could have been fleeing from the horrors of babies. But yeah, I volunteered, and all of them did. And there's no. I actually got caught with shrapnel. I got a shrapnel hit on my wrist one day, and I would tell you the guy who I was running. Some rockets started coming in, and I hate the fact I can't remember his name because it'll come to me. He held the door open in the embassy, and there were people screaming at him and hitting him not to close the door because alarms went off and the rockets were coming in. And I was carrying. I had some people that were in a really bad situation. I told them to go. I was going to carry their luggage or all the equipment in, and then rockets started coming in, and then three of them I think hit, and this guy held the door open for me while everyone was trying to push him aside and get the door closed so I can get into a bunker, into a protected area, and I got clipped with shrapnel, and it burned. I mean, I never think of shrapnel. Shrapnel's freaking hot. It burned my wrist. So the medics come over. I'm like doing what every hero does. Oh my God, it so hurts! It hurts. Like, oh, it hurts. And the medics come over. They're like, congratulations, you got the Purple Heart. I'm like, dude, I'm in the FBI. I get no Purple Heart. I have to do a workers' comp form. They're going to force me to do. I'm like, Purple Heart. They're not giving shit to any of us. That was the case. That was the standard. If people there were just expected to have it. And it wasn't just me. I mean, some of the people, we were getting bombed for like 30 days at one point. And during that, one guy says, Kurt, I need some Doritos. I'm like, what? He's like, I need some Doritos. I'm like, we have to go to the PX over in the green zone to get some Doritos. I'm like, you realize it's like raining rockets out there. He's like, I tell you, I need Doritos. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go with you because you can't go alone. He wasn't allowed to go. I was allowed to go alone in certain places. He was not. He was not. Probably the reason they let me go alone was because of ADHD, I would guess. You just like don't bother. And but so I went with him. So I run over. There's literally like rockets coming in. Get to the PX and with the military, buy the Doritos and come running back. And then literally the thing there's rockets that are intermittently coming down, some small, some big, and run in, and my boss, Alex Hill, looks at me and goes, why'd you go over to PX? And like, because he wanted Doritos. He's like, are you a moron? It's like, why don't you wait till prayer? Another hour. Once you start prayer, there'll be no rock. I said, I didn't think of it. I'm sorry. You just wanted Doritos. And we did a lot of, it was a very interesting set of people there, and they worked together, and we never heard of any FBI agents getting killed because the bosses and people had a pretty good understanding of how to operate in the environment, a surprisingly good understanding, and it was because the bosses weren't going to do anything that would intentionally jeopardize the safety of people when they didn't have to. There were sometimes you'd have to, we'd have our helicopter would be shot all the time, but there were some times where they were like, no, we're not going to do that. We could do it tomorrow, except for the Doritos. They let me do the Doritos.
So what was a typical mission for you in Iraq?
I was the head of counterintelligence in Iraq. Sorry. That's Doritos. I mean, it was, I did a war crimes, unclassified, I did a war crimes case where a U.S. soldier named Stephen Green, he raped a 12-year-old Iraqi girl. And then him and four other 101st Airborne soldiers, they raped an Iraqi girl, and then they executed her family while they were raping her. Now, Stephen Green had gotten in on, I think he got in on a moral waiver into the military, and the problem with him was he was a natural leader. He was also a guy who was nothing but problems. It was unfair to put him near any soldiers because the 101 is what's Band of Brothers. These are the best, one of the best units in most storied units in the entire U.S. military is the 101 Airborne. And so this case was so bad. I had it was 2006. The execution occurred. The same unit rotated back. One of the sergeants in that was on his hands and knees, holding onto my leg, begging me to forgive him. I'm like, it's not your fault. He's like, but we were there. We have stained the honor of the 101st Airborne over this. It was painful. I'm like, I get it. We're going to do the case. That's why we're doing this case in federal court, is because it's not a unit issue. This is just because what's happened. The story was what happens in Iraq used to stay in Iraq. That was the motto. That wasn't the case. If you hurt somebody like that, some 12-year-old girl, and you're going to brutalize her, the FBI will bring you back. The DOJ will prosecute you. That was, and the soldiers, the bosses, were horrified by this. I went out there and I had to meet with some people. It was not a good situation, and I had a choice between making my airplane. I had a Christmas flight back to be with my family, so I had to decide, because I couldn't get another flight. I decided I was not going to. I wasn't going to stay there, or I wasn't going to go back. I would do the interviews, and I'd miss my Christmas, and so I went out and did the interviews, and I was sitting there, and at the end of it, I'm like, okay, now I got to get one of the black helicopters to fly me back to Baghdad, and I'll be sitting there for Christmas. And the people from the 101 were like, oh, no, we're not doing that to you. So they put together a convoy to drive me to the airport. And when I say it was not a pleasant drive, it wasn't a pleasant drive at all, but they risked, I didn't want to do it. I'm like, no, that's just too much risk involved in this. And they're like, no, we're getting you back to you're going to make your flight no matter what. We're not going to have you lose that. And a lot of them didn't like me because I was doing the case. I was bringing undue attention to them. But they literally forced a convoy together to drive me to a C-130 so I could fly back to the States, because they didn't want me to miss my. I didn't think it would matter to them. But they forced the issue, so I was going to be home for Christmas.
What was the final outcome in that case?
He killed himself. I think he got 500 years in jail. He's got life. I think it was by terms, and then I think in 2011 or 12 he committed suicide. They wanted the death penalty in the case. It was held in Kentucky. They wanted the death penalty, but the jury wasn't going to give. And this was an issue. The jury wasn't going to give a death penalty because the Army issued the guy a moral waiver. So because we have shortened troops, we're going to get a guy who lacks morals. That's what you get. That would seem to be the place you want to have people that have some morality sitting in a combat zone. It may sound odd, but you want to make sure people have their ethics squared away, because bad things will happen. And he was the perfect example. And then the other four people, he was a leader, and people would freely admit that he was one of the best leaders in that unit, and he took over that group, and he told them, this is what we're going to do for the night, and they did it. Four of them served time. They were convicted the other three were convicted under the UCMJ, and they did a few years. I'm sure they're all out by now. But Steve Green was the one who was behind what happened there. He had some really, he had a set of characteristics that was not conducive to having him anywhere near a war zone.
Do those cases ever leave your mind? Like when you see things like that? When you see people do those things?
I've been lucky. I did in Connecticut, the child exploitation unit. I apologize, I forget what it's called now, but the Connecticut's human trafficking, child exploitation unit, and I never looked at any child porn. I did that for several years, and I would never look at it because I wanted to make decisions that were not hampered by that. All of my subordinates, they had to deal. When you think of child porn, you think, oh, some 13-year-old. That's not what's going on with child porn. A lot of times it's like a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old in Africa being raped. I mean, these things, this child pornography is awful. But I wouldn't look at it because I wanted to make decisions that were detached from the experience itself. And to be empathetic, but also not to go down that rabbit hole. But all of the people that were working for me, they had to go through psychologicals, and it seemed that the time people could do it roughly for about 3 years before it was taking a toll, and you'd have to get out of the pure child porn. There's other thing, human trafficking, but the child porn stuff was 3 years, and you were basically spent. Coincidentally, I was doing that for about 3 years, and I was spent by the time I was done with it. But we would also never take people that wanted to do the work. Oh, I want to do this work. We would be like, no, we don't want anybody who's too, we want to kick their ass. No, we don't want that. We don't want people who are going to be emotionally affected, because everyone who we arrested for child porn, one is they always confessed. Our people, they would have a confession. They needed to justify themselves. And if you had people that were emotional about it and, really were not being dignified to the people they were arresting, you wouldn't have confessions. They would shut up. But it was the people that we had that would do the interviews, anyone who was getting arrested, and you wouldn't get arrested for having one thing. You'd be arrested for having 50,000 pieces of this stuff and having a history. We weren't looking at close calls because we're people that were, there's people that send others child porn to get other people in trouble. In fact, I know some podcasters that have received child porn because someone else was trying to get them in trouble by sending. They didn't like the politics, but by treating the people with dignity, I don't know of a single time there was not a confession. I mean, I would tell you if even one, because for some reason they wanted to justify themselves, and the agents treated them with incredible amounts of deference and respect, even though they were arresting them.
Where did you go when you got back from Iraq?
I went to New Haven. I started in New Haven.
And that was in the child?
No, that I was doing. I was doing casino frauds in casinos with the casinos out west.
Frauds in casinos?
Well, we arrested the tribal chief of the casino for fraud
in Connecticut.
In Connecticut, yeah. Well, I was the embarrassment of Indian reservations. Okay, so, let's talk about Indian reservations. Can I talk about Indian reservations?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
One of my sons says you can't call them Indian reservations. Actually, that's what the federal they call this. The federal terminology, the FBI terminology was crimes on Indian reservations. Okay, and when you go out west, you got Asians out there like have these huge reservations where where anyone who lives on them, they don't use guns, they all use knives. Generally, you're going to have the killings will happen with a knife. They're very bloody, and meanwhile, so I got all these guys who are hardcore, going out there. Would have to have an AR-15 because they were, they're going to go be one guy against the whole tribe to arrest one of the bosses who got drunk and then slit somebody, stabbed them in the abdomen. They're going to go do this arrest alone, and because Indian reservations are federal and they're the FBI jurisdiction for felonies. So they have that. Then I have 2 postage stamps, like. The Indian reservations are about that big in Connecticut, that both have casinos on them, and don't have crime, and so they were like, "It's not really an Indian reservation, Kurt." I'm like, "No, that's my little Indian reservation. I have to take." So I went out to one, and I was driving out there, and I'm like, I couldn't find the agent. I'm like, "Where are you?" I'm like, he goes, "Did you drive down the road?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, how far? I said, I don't know, about 20, 25 miles. He's like, look to your right. Do you see anything? I'm like, yeah, I see like a bunch of mounds. He's like, those are huts. Those are that's the town we're looking at. That's where we're going. I'm like, that's a town? He's like, yeah, that's where I work, dude. I'm like, are you kidding me? He goes, no, you got a reservation. You can go get like Starbucks. There's no Starbucks where I'm working out here. So we drive into this, and it was a killing. And I'm like, and that's where I go. He goes, I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh. He goes, Kurt, let me show you what this is. So he kicked open his trunk, and he had body bags in his trunk for all the killings that they were doing. That's where he kept body bags. I mean, that's how bad some of these reservations are, extremely dangerous. I'm like, oh my God. He goes, yeah. I'll go back to the Mashantuckets and the Mohegans that are just nice, good casinos, enjoy them.
Do they have to invite you in, or
now we have
jurisdiction?
Over that we have the FBI has jurisdiction over all federal crimes on Indian reservations. There was an issue in Oklahoma where there was a Supreme Court decision that made like a good portion of Oklahoma Native American. So the state police can't arrest the Native Americans in that section of the state. Only the FBI can. So if the state police are like, what are we going to do? And they're like, well, we have to have the FBI come in and monitor until they change what the law is. And so we had agents rotating in, like lots of them rotating in to be the presence of law enforcement in Oklahoma, where this group of Native Americans would not be policed if it wasn't for the FBI. It was really a strange, and a lot of it comes from the treaties they have, with the treaties and how the interpretation of the treaties. In Connecticut, that's not such a big deal because out west, the Native Americans are always saying we have to follow the treaties. But with the Mashantucket Pequots, no Mashantucket wants to follow those treaties because it the treaty was you no longer can speak the language. All the guys got to go to Bermuda. We get to all the white people get to keep the women. I mean, it was like this brutal set of agreements that came after a war. The Mashantucket War. Maybe it was. I don't think it was King Philip's War. King Philip was actually an Indian, but there was after the tribe they had a brutal set of requirements for the Mashantuckets that destroyed the tribe and also dispersed them. I think there were some even maybe now in Bermuda was where they sent slaves and. In Old Saybrook, and it's been taken down. They have a fort in Old Saybrook at the end. It shows where the foundation. It has all these things about where of how the fort worked and what happened. And one of them was at the end was a picture of. Then we had the massacre over with the Mashantuckets because the Puritans. Pilgrims came first, Puritans after. The Puritans basically ambushed and destroyed a village. But on Old Saybrook's picture, it's showing like the colonial or the Puritans like aiming down at children, shooting. I mean, right on their thing, and they eventually pulled it down. But it was like, wow, okay, so we're going to be that blatant about how bad this was. But the Puritans destroyed that. The Mohegans and the Mashantuckets were at war and didn't have good relations for a while because I think some of the Mohegans helped, acted as guides. So this is old traditions, but fortunately they were able to reestablish themselves in Connecticut, and they have they're federal reservations. Those aren't like inside Connecticut. There's laws. The state has agreements, but ultimately those are dependent nations inside Connecticut. They're small. But they're definitely if agreements aside, they are dependent sovereign nations of the United States.
So tell us about this fraud case.
I think there was so much money going around the tribe. I got apologize. I may be wrong on this. There was money that was diverted to pay for Michael Thomas's mother who was receiving cancer treatment, but they were like using a limousine to rather than the vehicle, a normal town vehicle. I mean, it was sad. It was actually sad because Michael Thomas was well respected, and this is the point where you get into problems sometimes inadvertently. That I'm helping out my mother, but that's government money, not your money. It's hard to sometimes distinguish when you're a politician, and that happens quite frequently when if you're a politician, what's best for you as the mayor isn't necessarily best for the town. So he was convicted, and that wasn't the best case out there. There were people that once you go across the Connecticut River, Eastern Connecticut is a different place. You know that, right? Okay, because Eastern Connecticut, unlike Western Connecticut, where you have police departments, there's a lot over there where you have 3 state troopers, and that's covering the entire, except for like New London and the towns on the shore. You got 3 state troopers covering everything. There is no backup. Those guys get in a fist fight, they're going to fight on the road. They got to wait 20 minutes for another trooper to come along. You have in Groton, there was a trailer park, or right around Groton. There's several, but there was one trailer park where everybody who was on the lam would go to this trailer park. Literally, they fled to Connecticut. Oh my God, I gotta go. So they called me up. Hey, you gotta go over and ask the person who asked the head of the trailer park whether this person has been around. Literally, they go to one trailer park in that area. There's also another town. I can't remember if it's Plainfield or Plainville, where like, within 10 miles of that, like if someone flees in the East Coast, they go there and they can live the rest of their life happily ever after and never be caught. There was one guy he was a bank robbery in either North or South Carolina with his brother. They're robbing a bank. They're trapped. The brother shoots himself because he's not getting out of it. It's like turning out that movie Heat. This guy, once his brother shoots himself, this other guy's like, oh, I'm not doing that. He runs off. He gets shot. He runs off. He has an injury to his back, and he disappears. And they call up. They're like, hey, we got this guy who's a felon. He disappeared. I'm like, is he at the – are you going to tell me he's at the trailer park? I'm like, no. He said, well, wait, let me guess. He's around – I think it's Plainfield. He's over by Plainfield. I'm like, yeah, how'd you know? I'm like – how would I ever know that? So I go up there, and this guy is like 90 years old. He's quadriplegic, and it was like, we just want to get your fingerprints. He's like, Kurt, yeah. I'm like, I'm gonna die soon here, but I want to tell you, I did it. Like, I don't know what you do. I know what it is. And so he took his fingerprints, and he had hid successfully there for decades with no one ever finding, because there's just not a lot of police out there.
What do you think was the most interesting fraud case you worked while you were in Connecticut?
Most of my fraud cases were in because I was part of violent crime in Connecticut. And most of those were in New York. The fraud case was an art theft case out of Madison. Not because it was a high end, because when I got back from Iraq, I was probably a complete mess. And so I went to a place called Willoughby's for coffee, and I'm sitting there in Willoughby's drinking my coffee, and I'm looking across the street, and there is a art dealership there that is selling Picassos. I'm looking at this going, that's all junk. Now, I'm no art. I've done a few art cases, but I'm no art expert. My theory on art is if I can draw it, it's not art. I could draw those Picassos. I'm looking at painting, and I'm like, wow, it looks like a 3-year-old did that. And so I went over I looked at it, and I asked the police, and the detective there, a guy named Trent Fox, who was probably one of the best detectives in the state, was trying to do that case. In the U.S., it's, unless you're New York City or maybe L.A., it's impossible to do an art fraud case because the galleries won't cooperate with you. They will cooperate. They helped out the FBI, but they won't cooperate. They won't cooperate with locals because it's problematic for them. So I knew the people from Sotheby's and from Christie's. So I told them, hey, look, we worked the case. He got arrested. The gentleman got arrested, and then he went to We were expecting he was going to get no time at all, and he eventually got, I think, 5 years. He served hard time because he wasn't going to cooperate, and he accused. I think he accused me of beating him up during the interview or some crazy thing like that, and the judge was going to have none of it because she was aware that there were a lot of other people in the room, and she was aware of how we actually tape recorded. I think we tape recorded the interrogation.
How do you know it was a fake Picasso?
If I can do it, it's not real. I think during the hearings, the defense had a guy who was like an expert, and he went missing. The guy, literally, right before the hearing, he went missing, and the attorney on the other side called me up and said, our expert's missing. So I had to spend like 2 days looking for, the expert had like, had a seizure in his car and was like in the middle of winter and was literally like just unconscious in his car for a day and a half. And I'm running around looking for the defense's expert. And Richard Marquette was a lawyer on the other side. And we were worried about him, and Richard was asking, why are you spending time? I'm like, because it matters. I mean, if we're wrong, we're wrong. I mean, they should have an expert testifying about what they are if they have one. It makes sense to, you give people a day in court, and if they hired an expert, and so the expert came in and looked at it and was like, okay, it was because I mean, Picasso is a genius. I'm not. If I can paint something, it's not. But it's not. And the guy admitted to me that he bought it on eBay, and we did a combination. I think we charged him with Picassos, Dalis, and Chagalls. And when we did the search, we found they had stationery that was for Christmas. He had stationery like invitations for Christmas, and on the back of the invitation there were like Chagall signatures, like practice signatures, and the evidence guys actually went in and like, oh, here's a bag of trash. That could be evidence. We should take it, which I would never do. And I mean, I would leave the trash, but they went through the trash and found signatures where he was practicing Chagall signatures. And one of the real shames, one of the pieces that he got, and they were prints. This guy had, this guy would take Picasso prints, and then he would sign them, or he has someone sign them. But we brought an expert in, and the expert was looking at that one going, oh my God, look at this. And I'm like, why, is it all wrong? He goes, no, Kurt, this is actually real. I've never actually seen, was the largest, he was in charge of the largest collection of Chagall or of Picassos in the world, private collection. He's like, this thing is beautiful. I've never seen this. And I'm like, well, what's it worth? And he's like, it's not worth, I'm not saying that it's worth a lot financially because it's a print. He goes, but they don't exist. This is something that's real. And then some jackass put a fake signature on this and wrecked it. He's like, so here's what I need you to do. He said, I need you to go to the guy who owns this, that my guy sold this to. I need you to tell him you need to go to a museum level person and have them remove that signature. He goes, it's going to cost you more than probably the signature's worth. He goes, but that is such a beautiful piece that just for historical sake, they should remove the signature, have it as Picasso wanted, because these things just don't exist anymore. And so he had at least one or two things that were real. The other thing he had was for Salvador Dali, he had a ton. He actually did the printer for Salvador Dali's art before he went to Madison. So I don't know how it worked, but with like Salvador Dali would come in and he'd get like 300 prints, and then he would sign them and number them, and then he'd leave, and then this guy or somebody else would like run off like 50,000 more and then give them to cruise ships. And but he had tons of these things. So, but he had the original. Not mold. He had the original prints that were used to actually make the original the prints, the replicas. He had what was these. So they were original. I mean, this was made with the same ink, the same casting, and they're like, you can't prove the case. And then Trent Fox, the detective, was sitting with the Salvador Dali expert, and they're looking, and Dali's looking, this expert's looking, oh, that's real, that's real, that's real. And then the Detective Fox looks over and says, sir, I just want to show you something. He goes, can you turn that piece around? And he turns one of the pieces around and goes, that's an infinity marking on this piece. And the guy's like, yeah. He goes, the paper wasn't made when Dali was signing things. And the expert's looking at it, and he's looking at it, and he's looking at it. And then he walks away, he walks back in. And we had then measured, because the guy actually shaved this. Whoever did this shaved off the infinity marking, so you could see you couldn't see on the side. He goes, it's fake. He goes, you're right. That paper wasn't made. Was made a year. They changed the company that made that paper added the infinity marking at least a year after Dali was done signing. He goes, so I have to deem all of these to be fakes. And I was looking at my detective going, whoa, you know what the hell you're doing. And so, I mean, that was, how do you beat that? The paper didn't exist. So it's not, someone sat there at night and printed them off. Not that they're not perfect. The thing is, and even the expert, we would agree, it's a great print. It's just that the signature, it's not an original signed Dali with the numbering. Everything else about it's almost exact. I mean,
So in a case like that, do victims come forward to get their money back, and is there restitution, or it doesn't go that far? It just he goes to prison for fraud and that's it.
I used to say, at the time I did this, I used to say I like my subjects more than I like my victims. Because most people who are paying for this don't want to admit out loud they were abused, that they got ripped off. A few of them did, but now a lot of them were like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, how about this check? Well, don't know where that came from. And then when you had going back to the Gambino case with internet pornography, nobody would admit that out loud. I mean, I had people tell me they would sooner kill themselves than ever testify a day in court about them looking at child porn, because they're from a Baptist town in the middle of Oklahoma, and they'll be publicly humiliated. And so what we did there was we got people from New York City who could care less. Oh yeah, I was looking at all that. He goes, no problem, I'll be happy to testify. So that resolved the issue. But but the victims were actually hard to get. We had to locate victims. We had one cop or one sheriff down south who was looking at it, and he was looking at the internet pornography, and he was paying to the sheriff's department was paying money. He wouldn't admit to it. It goes, but the people in New York that were from New York and from Miami and from LA, I think were really where we were able to get our witnesses.
So you moved from fraud to the child exploitation cases?
Yeah, I did fraud until I went to Iraq, and then when I went back, I did. I went from when I got to New Haven, I was doing Indian country, violent crimes. Went back to Washington, and then came back again, and that's when I started doing civil rights, which has child exploitation as one of the subcategories. Civil rights case, for some reason at that point, the child exploitation unit was part of the civil rights unit in FBI headquarters.
Were there a lot of civil rights cases in this area? We
have probably Connecticut has some super well-trained police. I mean, you have police officers that have master's degrees, have bachelor's degrees. That's not the case in a lot of different places in the country, and certainly not in the world. But these are highly educated. There are a lot of highly educated police officers in Connecticut where you don't have who understand you're not gonna harass a person just because you arrest them, and that makes the difference. It takes a lot of self-restraint to be a police officer. You can't take out whatever's going on in your family on the job. You got to leave it separately. And the departments, I mean, I've been impressed with the departments and the state police. the state police are just really good. And I know they've had some issues recently with one or two people, but I mean generally you find the state police are as professional as you can find, and you don't see them pulling people over. I think one of the good things in Connecticut was, you remember a few years ago you could do stops for drugs, and that has been there have been some laws that have really clamped down on having police just doing pretext stops for drugs. Now everyone knows that when you go from New York to Bridgeport, that's a drug highway, and then if Hartford's generally Bridgeport is out in being filled by New York. Danbury is being filled by New York. Hartford, New London generally come out of the Boston area for narcotics. Different levels and qualities of drugs. It's but the police, they're not doing a lot of the pretext stops, which I think is good, because then you're not getting kids just getting pulled over for no reason. Just one of the, I know where is the location of your studio public, or not the exact location, but the city?
Yeah, Richfield. Yeah.
Okay, so in Richfield, we had about 2017, there was an influx of people that were crossing the border in Mexico, and they were coming to this area, living across the border, because we're right on the New York border, coming into Ridgefield, and then there were four. The group would consist of at least 3 or 4 women. It would have a baby, have a few guys, but they were going in front of. There's a Stop and Shop in Ridgefield, right?
Yeah, okay. That's the only supermarket.
Yeah, the only supermarket. So they would have one live baby, and they would have 4 quote unquote mothers. And the mothers would rotate, but they would leave the baby out in the cold alone, and they would beg for money, and then people in Ridgefield would be like throwing them $20 bills. So, and then they're on YouTube or Facebook and YouTube with like literally stacks of $20 bills. Like, look what we got here from Ridgefield. And then all of a sudden, these were actually Romanians. They're the Romas, and so we all of a sudden then the right at the same time, the pocketbooks of the teachers at the Ridgefield High were getting stolen. They're stealing all the stuff in the cars, and then all of a sudden, readers started appearing on gas credit cards around here. Like, the whole invasion of crime started in Ridgefield. So I got called down. This is the civil rights, child exploitation, but called down by the prosecutor in Charmise. Her name is Charmise Walcott. She's a state's attorney in Hartford, and like, what are we going to do? I'm like, well, we can open a case. She goes, Kurt, I won't allow you to open a case. You have a baby out there who's sitting out there for 8 hours in the cold while these people are all able to sit in the car. I want them done. They're gone. And I'm like, Charmise tells me what to do. I do it. I mean, she is a phenomenal prosecutor. So we said, I'll find out where they are. So they were working in Ridgefield. I think one of the cops had kind of scared them away. So then they appeared up in Danbury. And I was like, well, I could have such a great organized crime case against the Romanians, literally coming across the Mexican border, coming up here. And I can't do it because Charmise is absolutely 100% correct that we have to get the baby off the street. So first thing we do, we find them. They're up in a Stop and Shop on Route 7, or there's one of those, maybe not a Stop and Shop, but there's a area right there with a bunch of stores, and they're out there doing the same thing. 4 mothers. You got, I'm sure, the gas card things. And so we would roll in there, tell the Danbury cops, they come in. It wasn't Danbury, it was the town north. The cops come in and Brookfield, they arrest them. They arrest him. Like, what the hell? What do you mean arrest me? You arrested me and my poor baby. So then they arrest all the other, they arrest them, and they arrested just the mother. And they're like, and the mother, that quote unquote mother, like, is it your baby? Yes. Okay, good. Okay, so we're gonna arrest you, but we have to put the baby into Child Protective Services because you're getting arrested for abuse of this child for leaving her out for 8 hours. And she's like, oh, no. We had 4 of us mothers now. It wasn't just me. There were 4. Whoa, is the baby yours or is the baby? Well, okay, so we're going to bring DCF now in, and they're going to take the baby until we do DNA tests to figure out who the baby belongs to, who's a real mother, hasn't stepped forward yet. And this is all in 4 hours. I'm sitting there, and the Brookfield police are just running these people crazy because they have all of their little scams, their statements they have that to get out of stuff like this, and they're all sitting there giving the Brookfield cops the same statement. And Sharmise Hodge had already told the Brookfield cops, no. We're not playing this. That baby, we're going to have DCF in there no matter what. Just listen to them. And he goes, and when they're ready, just hand them off to Kurt. So the Brookfield police terrorize. I mean, just torture them because they're giving statement after statement. Oh, so you're not the mother? Who's the mother? You're all lying to me now. And the people are all trying to figure out what to do. And then finally, the Brookfield cop tells one of the guys, "Go over and talk to the FBI agent over there." And the guy comes over. I'm like, "I want to talk to your boss." He's like, "What boss? I have a boss." "Oh, you have a boss. I want to talk to your boss tonight." He goes, "Everybody's getting arrested here." He goes, "You need to talk to the boss because I'm limited on what I can do, but I'm going to do something." So he walks away, and then about 30 minutes later, he comes back with a phone, and he says, some guy wants to talk to you." I'm like, "Okay, does he speak English?" He goes, "Yeah, he speaks English." I'm like, "Okay, here." So I tell the guy, "Listen, this is how this goes. Ridgefield, Danbury, Connecticut's off limits for this BS. You bring your kids in here, we take your kids. We promise you, we're taking this one, but we're going to take them all. You bring any children in here, we're going to take them. There are no cases. They're all going to DCF, and then we're charging the parents. That's how this is going to work." He goes, we go, we can't, no, we've already seen your videos over in New York, so we know they're very aware of you, but you do this in Connecticut and Ridgefield. He goes, I promise you that this whole thing was going to turn out very bad, very fast. So go pull all your readers off the gas stations, go take all your mothers and get them out of here right now because this is over. And he goes, and by the way, I'll tell the prosecutor is Sharmise Hodge, so if you want to call her up and ask her, she'll explain to you how this does. She'll have a nice conversation with you. And then they just disappeared. And they may be back. Do you see any Romas around here?
It's so funny the scam started in Ridgefield, Connecticut, because they picked the worst spot to start.
I know.
They probably never would have been caught if they.
Oh, the money.
I mean, it's great money here,
yeah.
But there's just no crime happens here. So people are going to take notice of that very quickly.
The police weren't, well, yeah, but no one wanted, for them, they were all dressed the same. No one knew what the hell the cop did, but he was like, he goes, the police they didn't see it before, so they were like trying to figure out this. And I mean, I've seen we have waves of gypsy organized crime that roll through occasionally, and I'd seen it before. But they like, how do you shut this down? But like I said, we normally open up an investigation. We do wires, this and that. And the prosecutor like, we can't. We're not doing any. We're not having a child stay out on the street. We're going to slam this everywhere it goes right away. I'm like, that's perfect.
Why were the feds involved right from the beginning?
Because they're trafficking children across state lines.
But they didn't know from the beginning, did they?
No. They were. The problem was they weren't sure how to handle it. So they were literally looking for me to come in and provide some expertise on the field, and again, I had the same. That's why I went and talked with Sharmise, and I had the same reaction. Like, this is really, how can you leave a baby out there for 8 hours? I mean, that's a felony. I mean, if we can charge it, and she's like, no, we're going to charge. We're going to stop it. We have to stop. We can't have this individual. We're going to have to stop the organization.
I've been seeing in Danbury some of the women are selling fruit, like, the fruit on the side of the road,
yes,
where they go up to the cars, but they'll have like a baby attached to them.
Yeah, well, yeah,
and they're working now all day.
Yeah, this is well, Sharmise Hodge went up to Hartford, so now they've realized that you can get in here. This is again, if you're not handling that type of low end organized crime, if you're not addressing it, it will flare up and become a problem. I think the biggest problem that really caused them was when they just went around and like started stealing the pocketbooks from the teachers. Because when in Ridgefield, how much did that? I mean, then that's like there's more to this than meets the eye. That was what guaranteed, and they started pulling out all the crime, and then like 80% of it was like that's part of the scam. That's part of the scam, and then Ridgefield like, let's just stop this. Let's do what we can.
So when people think organized crime, they just think like the mob. It's more than that, right?
Yes, because the organized crime here, they're able to pay for tourist transport into Mexico, get transported up. They paid that. They got to the U.S. and then they got up to this area. No, there's a lot of different organized crimes. I mean, I look at it in the generally as it's an enterprise. It's its own business that's doing it, and that's there for the purposes of committing the crime. That's really, I mean, the mob is just good at it. You have the Jamaicans, and you used to have those groups that were good at with drugs, but they're enterprises. It's not just looking at here's one deal or one small packet of heroin. It's looking at it on how do we stop the enterprise from doing this.
What division did you finish your career in?
I finished it by the end of it, for the last 3 years, I ran the human trafficking task force. I ran the child exploitation units. I ran the computer forensics unit. Then I also ran the covert technical operations unit, which was those guys were just off the charts good. There's no better group of people. For all of them, they're just so good. And during the COVID, the New York police, their computer forensic unit, basically stopped working. The FBI stopped working because people were sick, and they called us up to go into a motel on Staten Island because people were now robbing banks using the blue masks, the medical masks. They were robbing banks. Like, oh no, we got to stop this. This is not going to work. We're going to have to look for the guy with the blue mask when everyone's wearing them. And so they called up. They're like, is your computer forensic unit deployable? And I'm like, to where? And they're like, to New York. We want you to do what New York City right now is unable to do. I'm like, call them up. Are you deployable? And they're like, well, yeah. So I'm like, oh, I want to go on this one. Normally I won't go to sit there and see them unload computers, but I got to see this. I know New York City. So we drive down. It's a hotel in Staten Island, which is like a drug infested motel. Probably each of the rooms are going probably for $20 a night. It was just the worst of the worst places. I'm sitting there, and my computer forensics guys come out, and they start putting on those white moon suits they have. They got the white moon suits, the mat. I'm like, this is your computer. You got this crap for computer forensics? My human trafficking people, everybody there is stuck with COVID. They're sick, and you guys got all this. He's like, this is what we do, Kurt. We're prepared. And they go into this hotel. So they're getting ready to go in the hotel. And I'm sitting there on the trunk of my car going, this is a complete, I don't even know what to say, with the biggest geeks ever who can know how to do forensics on computers, actually have all the gear to go to the moon and to survive in space. And then I'm looking right down the street. There's a drug deal going on. And one guy's in a house. There's another guy. They're trying to exchange narcotics. And because of COVID, they don't want to get too close to each other. So one guy's like walking out, they're yelling to each other. They're trying, you drop the cash on that side of the street, I'll drop the drugs on this side, and then we'll walk over and we walk back. And I'm sitting there going, this is absolutely the craziest thing. And then my guys go into this hotel and start pulling out all the electronics, all the tape. They're actually substituting tapes because this hotel was so poor. They had old stuff and they would never be able to get their machines working. So they had to go in and put in new tapes and do all this stuff to get the hotel working in, take the tapes, duplicate them on site. Just a huge process of so I hopped in one of they brought a moon suit for me. So I hopped in the moon suit and walked in there, and I mean, everybody in this place was sick. Everybody was sick. I mean, it was awful. Everyone was sick in this building. It was just completely. I don't even know what to make of. They're all drug addicts, all the worst shape possible, and all had COVID. And meanwhile, I got my computer guys doing the computers because these guys decided to go to Connecticut to rob the bank with the mask and someone in this building. So so I come out and I'm like, I need to be decontaminated. I mean, I need to be decontaminated because this is like, I'm going to get COVID from this. So I'm like, take off my white suit, this white, you know what I'm talking about, those white suits they have with the face, and I take the white suit off as best I can, and I'm trying to discard it, and I'm putting it. I don't even know what you do with it. And then some guy walks up to me who's like half naked, and he's like, "Can I have your suit?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna throw it away. Why do you want it?" He goes, "Oh, I just want to wear it. Looks pretty cool." I'm like, "Oh, feel free, knock yourself out, dude. You go." So he puts the suit on. He starts walking around. He looks like something from 28 Days Later, walking around Staten Island. All of a sudden, the cops see him. Now they're all like, nobody wants to go near him because they think he's infected. So it's like he's walking around with the moon suit, and all the police are running. I'm like, I'm out of here. This has gotten too weird for me. And then we drove up, and we went to by the Javits Center, and they had. And people tell me about COVID, about what, how bad. They had those trailers filled with dead bodies. I mean, they had 16 or 17 trailers that were in the I just sat there. I mean, I was probably a few hundred yards away looking at, and no one was around looking at this going, oh my God, this is how do you even handle? There are so many bodies being dragged out of there, and there are trailers everywhere, and they're moving them out. And I was thinking they're going to have some type of open, those mass graves, which is exactly what they had because there's just too many of them. But again, my CART guys, being the technical wizards they are, have the moon suits and all the computer gear, and they're able to go in even when New York and FBI New York and the NYPD can't do it. They're there doing it. They were just phenomenal. I mean, there's nothing like some of the experts in the FBI.
Why did you decide to leave the FBI?
It was a combination. When I was sick, I have a bad habit that I help out people, FBI agents that are in trouble, and that's kind of what I'm known for in the FBI. Is I give advice to people that are in trouble in the FBI because they're my coworkers, and I handle a lot of people that are whistleblowers. And that's where I got into I became known as a whistleblower lawyer, and I've helped out a lot of people. In fact, the person who was supposed to be here, I'm actually the lousy substitute for coming here, but the person that was supposed to be here was actually one of those, and he got rehired by the FBI. We won't use his name. Great guy. I mean, and usually with whistleblowers, this is the same thing with a lot of people that get involved in crime. It happens kind of accidentally. It really does. It's hard to sometimes picture, but it does. Likewise, FBI whistleblowers are accidental whistleblowers. So they'll, hey, well, I want to report something was wrong, thinking that like everyone's going to do the right thing, and then they like, oh, you need to be fired for telling us that, and so they're like, what? And so they tell something that's wrong, thinking that the FBI are required to report misconduct, and when they report it, they target them for reporting it. And this has been going on for decades. And the first people that were really known for it was Fred Whitehurst was a person from the lab who reported misconduct in the FBI lab, and then Jane Turner, who was reported that people were stealing stuff or taking stuff from the World Trade Center as trinkets. And they both got in big trouble for reporting that. And it wrecked their careers and set them off on to be like some of the most known FBI whistleblowers, but they're accidental whistleblowers. They just wanted people to address a problem, and usually your whistleblowers in the FBI are some of your best and hardest working people.
So did the FBI give you a hard time for representing them?
Oh yeah. Well, I actually became notable because. There's generations of whistleblowers. Before I actually sued the FBI and went to they have an FBI whistleblower court, which is actually in DOJ, which is called ORM, Office of Attorney Recruitment and Management. It's kind of a joke. So the people you have to go to report about misconduct and how bad your job is are the people who are recruiting employees for DOJ. So the recruiters, hey, they're doing things wrong. We don't want to hear about that because we're recruiting. So this ORM is the one, by law, they only handle FBI whistleblowers. So they're like the court. When I say court, it means place of adjudication, not there's like a judge. It's just a bunch of recruiters that go around to college campuses, and then in their spare time they like adjudicate whistleblower cases. And so that was a joke. Before me, the first 8 or 10 cases that happened, it took 10 years to adjudicate, like 8 to 10 years to adjudicate the whistleblower cases, which is like anywhere else you can go to the Supreme Court. Death penalty cases don't take 8 years, but FBI whistleblower cases do. So I filed one, and I decided that I was going to do it a lot quicker than anyone else. So I did mine in 24 months for a combination of reasons. One is DOJ changed their attitude towards these whistleblowers, and they sped, and I wouldn't take a continuance. So whereas everyone else took 8 to 10 years, I was able to get two determinations against my bosses from New Haven in 24 months. And then I decided to sue them in federal court, and then settled that after they had enough of me. Actually, Comey, the guy who just got indicted, he actually came to Connecticut, apologized for the leadership deficiencies, which was fine for him. He should have done that, not personally to me, but to the employees. But after me, while I was doing that, people started calling me up saying, "How'd you do a combination?" Once, like, "Hey, I'm doing the same thing. How'd you win and no one else does?" So I would tell them what to do, and then I had some other people that called up, and they were like, "We want detailed information on how you did this because we want to do exactly the same thing." And so I explained that to them. They were actually designated the Taliban because they were so good at torturing their bosses that they were called literally for terrorists. The group was called the Taliban because they were so effective at winning at the stuff. And then so a bunch of people started winning the cases and getting settlements, and then I retired, and there were a bunch of people at that point who were being let go because of COVID, because of not wanting to take the COVID vaccine, and some religious issues, and they were all conservatives. And those people had called me up and asked for help, and it doesn't matter who does it. If it's an employee, I'm going to help them out and tell them how this works. And those people have a number of my people that I would call clients who have assisted, have just recently gotten their jobs back after like 3 or 4 years. And it's not about politics. It's just about if you report something wrong in the FBI, the boss should say, "Thank you very much, appreciate it. Don't let the door hit you in the ass." That's all they have to do. They don't have to do anything proactive. In fact, all they have to do is say thank you and move on and just document it. That's it. But for some reason, they feel you've told us something wrong. You've violated the integrity of the bureau, and you've embarrassed the bureau, and therefore we have to punish you. And that happens. I mean, unfortunately, that happens quite a bit. And so I've helped people out with that. There was one group that was of women back in 2000. There was a group of 5, I think 4 women, 1 guy plus another guy, who had decided they were going to fight right before me. And so I sat there when I was doing as I was doing my case. I watched them. Everything they did wrong, I was able to learn. But they had a deposition with one of the bosses in the FBI, and they're like, and this group was called the SIRG 5. And so during the deposition, the lawyer, a brilliant deposition, the lawyer said, "And what are these women called from Quantico?" And he goes, "Oh, we call them the SIRG 5." He goes, "So why have you designated your EEO cases as the same way you designate your terrorist organizations with the same type of name?" They're like, "What?" Like, "Yeah, SIRG 5. That's what you call everything else. That's a terrorist moniker for the FBI." And but they won, and they lost a bunch of stuff. Finally won. Another guy couldn't help. He couldn't win anything, but he gave me all of what he did and explained to me how he did it, and I just modified that and then was able to win and help people out by learning. And how I explain this to clients is you have a lot of employees who have climbed over barbed wire to get part of the way up there who never succeed, but they teach you how to do things. So take good notes and then do something different. And you may be stopped. You may be embarrassed. They're going to try to fire you, but get over the next set of wires and then let other people come. And there has to be, if the FBI can't be just to its own employees, how the hell are they going to be fair to anyone else? I mean, that you have to have that idea. The FBI has to be able to be critical of itself. Look, I screwed up my bike this morning. I was riding my bicycle.
Your e-bike.
My e-bike. Well, no, it was my bicycle. Yeah, my e-bike at like 4 a.m. Okay, and I forgot to put my sweatshirt on myself and left it on the back, and my sweatshirt got caught in the rear tires and almost threw me off the bike. Okay, very embarrassing at like 4 a.m. I screwed up my bike. Probably, but again, I want to fully admit that look, I'm not the best at riding a bike, but we have to, in order to get better at things, we have to admit what we're doing is wrong or there's problems, and that's the first step on succeeding at life. You don't succeed in life from your wins. You succeed from learning from your mistakes.
And then you retire and start starring in MrBeast videos.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, MrBeast, that was the best. Again, and people, there's non-disclosures that go with MrBeast. That group is probably the best set of people I've ever worked with. They are so hardcore. They work hard. They work long hours. They're wonderful. They have their own ethical standards on how they do stuff. People said, well, that was what you did was fake. I can tell you right now, it wasn't fake. I could tell you that I had to actively work on getting around certain problems that were almost insurmountable to me because I could barely run. But that wasn't the rule. There were some very strict rules, but that was a competition. And
I tell people that all the time.
Yeah, they
it
don't
wasn't
believe
fake. And then when I made a video about it, they were like, "How much did he pay you to say that?" Nothing.
Nothing.
I just think he's a good dude. It was good business, and it was a fun experience, and it wasn't fake. It was real.
It was real. Yeah. But you have to have they have to have rules because a lot of times it's being done in the open in an open area where third parties are. So they have very few rules, but they were very. They were very adamant about making sure that here are the rules, here's how this works, and if you and you're going to do this until you please do it. I told my kids love MrBeast. I said, look, I don't care if you humiliate me. Feel free. I am happy to. I'm happy to be embarrassed. Yeah, I'm happy to lose because my kids will think that's great too. It doesn't matter to me. I want to play it, and that attitude helped me with other people that were working there when they realized I was dead set that I was going to whatever was going to go on, I'm going to help. That helped me because then if I had any issues, they resolved them fast. But they were that's one of the best companies I've ever seen.
How many years were you in the FBI for total?
24.
Do you have any regrets looking back on your career, or anything you wish you did differently?
That's hard. I've been very fortunate. I've been very fortunate. Been able to make lots of mistakes and recover from them and learn and have worked with tremendous people. I mean, just phenomenal people. I mean, I've sat and I mean, it was an honor for me to go to the World Trade Center to help out. It didn't work out well for anyone. But it was an honor to help. It was an honor to be asked to go to Katrina to raise my hand and say, hey, I'm happy to go down there. My law school was in New Orleans, so I knew the place, and to see some of the things, like I said, there's a whole area of my work that's not for public consumption, but to see how the people in the U.S. and how the military acts in some of the most horrendous environments that you could ever imagine. Again, I said, when you sit down at a table and you're like, ooh, lobster and steak, what's this all about? Like, it's a last meal. When you have people that are sitting there, professionals, and you're like, shit like that you wouldn't even think that happens in real life. And come to find out it does. And you have people that are, I once watched, I was sitting watching some, I call them young women, but they're girls, but they were like 18, 19 years old, and they were sitting on top of Humvees or transportation. They were painting their fingernails brown or green, but they're waiting to go out for a convoy, and they're sitting there painting their nails. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, wow, that's, that looks like hell. I don't want to paint my nails on top of that. So they're sitting, but we walked around, and I was with my boss, Jim Davis. And all of a sudden, our compound was on the other side of the wall. All of a sudden, we start hearing shots going off, and lo and behold, FBI had a popcorn maker. I don't know why it would have a popcorn maker, but every Friday it had a party. It had a saloon called John O'Neill Saloon. And they would have every Friday night they would have a party, but it was Friday, and they had popcorn. This convoy was leaving. I had a bag of popcorn. I run up to the roof, and I'm watching these girls. I mean, they can't be more than 22 years old with wet fingernail polish, and they got ambushed right outside the gate, and they are fighting like no tomorrow with a bunch of insurgents, and those insurgents have AKs, and these women are running 50 calibers, and the insurgents have no chance. That we're 50 calibers are machine guns. The M2s are a sight to behold when you watch 3 or 4 women going to work on people that are wrecking their fingernail polish because they went to work on those guys, and those guys never had a chance. And we're sitting there, Jim Davis and I mean, I would have actually grabbed my rifle and participated, but I was too busy admiring the women work, having this gun battle with these guys. They literally they shot at them, and then these people went right to work. They went from being just relaxed to a full-on combat, like as good as any troops that have existed. And they're just transportation. They're just protecting a convoy. I mean, if I was them, I would have actually ambushed the middle of the convoy where the real troops are, not the women with all the 50 calibers who are going to mow your butt down and who are just going to overwhelm you with firepower. And that's what they did. Again, I sit there going, and I was sitting with Jim Davis, and Jim Davis, I'm like, I don't want to even shoot at these. I mean, it's like, there's nothing to do here. He's like, no. So we just sat there and watched this battle happen. And it was remarkable to watch the women. I had in the VA, I was walking down the VA one day, and a guy came. It was horrible for me. Horrible for him. He came up to me, or he rolled in a wheelchair. He goes, "Hey, Kurt, remember me?" And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, "No." And the guy had lost his arms and legs. He goes, I was at the I did the Subway sandwiches when you would come in and have, or I would order every day. I would go eat Subway sandwiches when I practiced law, and he was behind the counter. We cook and we talk, and he had lost his arm. I think both of his arms and both of his legs. And I didn't know what to say. I was horrified to see, the damage that he had suffered for the country, and I've been upset with myself because I didn't even know how to react. Normally, I'm pretty good with any type of stuff. And that was the one time I was speechless and horrified to watch what happened, and it was just amazing to see people like that have suffered and have really done stuff for America at the request of the president and Congress, and that are just remarkable, and they're young. Have you seen the movie Restrepo?
No.
Okay. They're the two best war. You never saw Restrepo?
There's a lot of movies.
Oh, no. Okay. So we'll go. So the movie Restrepo. Did you ever see the movie Hurt Locker?
Yeah, great movie.
Okay. Hurt Locker. Everything is factually wrong in that movie, except it's perfect, because when it gives you the feeling of what it's like to come back from Iraq. My father died when I was overseas, and I actually flew back for like 2 days to go to his funeral and then fly back. And I went to Stop and Shop to get some food, and I went to some cereal, and I stood in the aisle like, oh my God, I couldn't choose a cereal. In a year I haven't had a choice to choose a cereal. And I sit there with hundreds of types of cereals. I was just like dead, like it was overwhelmed. And so like everything about Hurt Locker is wrong except for the feeling of how it is perfect on how that does. That gives me sweats to watch some of that. It's a lot of people would say, it's their feeling of that of a year in Iraq, in 2 hours. The movie Restrepo is about a bunch of kids that were, I think, soldiers that were in charge of a little base in the Korengal Valley. And it's a video about them being there, which is probably the best war film ever, because you see the quality of kids that the U.S. has and what they are, plus how bad they are afterwards, how much they've grown up. And Restrepo is, I mean, your heart goes out for the kids for that, but they're mirror images of kids from that whole generation that had gone over, and some of them, tried to feel that they did something good for their country, and who suffered a lot. It's amazing. But if you ever have a chance, that shows, because it's not just them. You have the Marines, the soldiers, the women, the men, who have done very similar things, not in the same amount of conflict, but sometimes a lot more, who are just remarkable. So yeah, that's why I love the job, because I was able to see that firsthand. How was that for a long? What do I have any regrets? No.
That was a good answer.
Yeah.
Kurt, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, we could go all day, man.
Yeah.
You're great. I mean, the audience doesn't know, but me and you were chatting for a half hour before we even started.
Yes.
Off camera. As soon as you got in, we were chatting. But those are the best guests, The audience loves these types of conversations, and where the guest just runs with it. I sat down with a former police chief for the Virgin Islands, who worked on the DEA task force. That came out last night. And 3 hours interview. I think I said 3 sentences that whole interview, and he could have went for another 24 hours.
That's Virgin Islands is a tough place to be as far as law enforcement.
Yeah, it was. It was rough. But incredible stories, incredible storyteller.
Who knew? I mean, people don't know. Virgin Islands is a tough law enforcement. I knew a guy who was in the Virgin Islands. I asked him how it is. He goes, "Oh, it's good for me." He goes, "But my partner has to carry a gun in the shower because he does public corruption. So he literally has to carry a gun in the shower."
They said half of the police force is corrupt.
Yeah. Yeah, but the agent, he said he brings a gun in his shower because he does public corruption there. That's how scared I was scared a long time ago, how scared the guy was. Anyway,
Insane.
Thank you very much. It was an honor.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time out of your day to come over and be with us today.
Appreciate it.